Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we're going to take a look at 5 Tribes, the Artisans of Naqala. This is the first expansion for 5 Tribes from Days of Wonder / Asmodee. If you don't know about 5 Tribes, it's a really solid Euro game, probably the heaviest strategic game that Days of Wonder had put out to that point, to this point really. It was one of my favorite games from last year. I really enjoyed it. I think it missed the cut for my top 10 of the year, but it did make it onto my top 100 of all time because there's not a lot of solid Euro games that I particularly enjoy. I do like Euro games. I think I get labeled as a straight up Ameritrasher a little bit too much, but I'm very particular about the ones that I like, and I really enjoy the mechanisms of 5 Tribes, the whole Naqala aspect of it, something I also enjoy from Trajan. Now, the whole point of 5 Tribes was that there was exactly 5 tribes, but now what the Artisans of Naqala is adding is a 6th one. In fact, that's really the centerpiece of this entire set. Everything having to do with this expansion is that 6th tribe, which you integrate directly into the base game. You get new tiles, which will precipitate you putting out more of these purple artisan meeples. You have a new action associated with them. You have these new item tiles associated with their actions. The new tiles will also let you spend them in order to get some of those items. You have mountain ranges, which are an interesting thing that are on the special tiles that utilize the artisans, the purple meeples, and even a chasm, which is really just to fill out space because you just to have a perfect 6x6 grid. There's also a couple of updates to Djinns from the first game that have to do with the purple artisans. So all of this has to do with this new tribe. Let me go ahead and give you a brief look at everything that comes in the box and explain how all of these different actions work. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, this is everything that comes in the Artisans of Naqala expansion for 5 Tribes. I'll start off with the easy stuff. First, it comes with a new player cheat sheet. These are 2 different sheets. This is both sides of the sheet describing all of the new actions, new tiles, new elements to the game. And every player color now has a tent. This is one of the tents. And what this does, first off, it functions exactly like a camel, meaning you can place it down onto one of the tiles in order to denote control. And also, because it counts just like a camel, that means that in order for one of the end game conditions is that when a player puts out the last of their camels. Well, now, in order to trigger the end game, in addition to the not having any legal actions, one player must put down every camel and their tent. That is the only way that you're going to trigger the end game in that fashion. Now, what do the tents do upwards and above of just denoting control and ending the game? Well, when you put it out, at the end of the game, you are going to figure out how many red tiles are adjacent, or surrounding, I should say, your tent, including the one that you're on. Kind of like how when you use the builder action of the builder tribe, the blue meeples, you're counting up the blue tiles. In this case, you're counting up the red tiles. And for every red tile that is surrounding your tent, you're going to get a point at the end of the game. So the maximum number of points you could possibly get if you're really lucky would be 9 points. Alright, so on to the main event, the object of this expansion, which is the Artisans of Naqala, the purple tribe. Now, there's 2 different things that happen with the Artisans. And by the way, I'm assuming that you are familiar with 5 Tribes, so you know that if, wherever you drop your last meeple, you're going to pick up all the meeples of that same color, and then you take that tribe action. For the Artisans, it's 2 things. One is that you keep the Artisans in front of you, just like the Viziers and the Elders. Consequently, they can be assassinated by the red meeple action, just like the Viziers and the Elders themselves, from out in front of you. But at the end of the game, each artisan that you've collected is either going to be worth 3 victory points or 2 victory points. If no other player has more artisans than you do, you get 3 victory points for each of them. If that's not the case, you get 2 victory points for each of them, so either way you're going to get something. But the actual action of the artisans has to do with these tiles. These are magic item tiles, or just item tiles, we'll call them. These are either magic items or jewelry. So when you take the artisan action, however many purple artisan meeples that you collected, you get to look through the randomized, ignore kind of that I have these set up here like this, but all the tiles will be randomized and put into a stack face down. You'll take that many tiles that are face down, look at them in secret, choose one of them to keep, put it face down in front of you, and then discard the rest of the tiles. So just to go over those, first you have the precious items. I think I called them jewelry, but either way. The precious items are pretty simple. It's just however many victory points you have on them. You keep it secret in front of you till the end of the game. It's either worth 5, 7, or 9 victory points. That's it. All the other items are magical abilities that you can use only during your turn, and then you discard the tile. So you have the Burning Scimitar, which is going to let you kill 2 meeples of your choice, either from a tile or if they're in front of an opponent, just like the assassin action, essentially. You have the Fabulous Lamp, which is going to let you take one of the available Djinns from the stock, or you can take... I've lost the lamp. Or you can take the top one off the top of the deck. You have the Enchanting Flute, which might be my favorite of the magic items, because it's really cool if you can get it to work correctly. Essentially, you use this item, you get to choose a tile, and you get to take 5 meeples from adjacent tiles and put them onto the tile that you chose. It doesn't give you... You can't get control by doing this, but you can set yourself up for an awesome meeple action. Also, a good one is the Flying Carpet. When you're taking the meeple action, whatever your last meeple is, you can drop that on any tile that you want. You still have to respect the rules of last meeple, same color, but then you get to resolve it just as you normally would. The Rebirth Ring is going to let you take one of these discarded items, whether it's one of just the precious point items or another magic item, from the discard pile, and you get to take it and then use it in the future. The Tempest Talismans lets you take one of your camels that's out on the board and move it to any other tile that does not already have a camel. And then finally, the Horn of Plenty. You get to refill the resource row, which is all of the different market cards, and then reorganize them in any order that you choose, which again is just a really, really cool ability. All right, now let's talk about the new tiles that you see out here on the board. Now, this does require a bit of extra setup in the beginning of the game, by the way. What you're going to do with the tiles, it's something like you're going to take, you're going to randomize the original tiles from the game, take 10 of those tiles, mix in the 6 new tiles that you see here. Then you're going to make a 4x4 grid with those 16 tiles. Then you're going to take the rest of the tiles you set aside from the main game, shuffle those up, and then fill out the grid so that it's a 6x6. So this does make the board bigger, because then you're going to follow the typical rules of putting 3 meeples randomly onto each of the tiles. Consequently, the board has to be bigger since you're introducing a brand new tribe. Now, one of these tiles is just a filler tile. This is the Chasm. What this does is simply just sits there, and you cannot move any meeples through it or land onto it. It does nothing. It just takes up space. If you want to move meeples, you're going to have to move around it. These 3 tiles are workshop tiles, and they correspond directly to the Artisans. And the first important thing about them is that at the start of the game, it's kind of hard to see. But you may notice that there are these little emblems on each side of these tiles in different spots. These are mountain spaces. When you set up the game, as soon as you've got these tiles down on the table, you're going to have to put these mountain ranges in their appropriate spots. And what that means is, just like with the Chasm, these create an impasse that meeples cannot go through. You can land on these tiles all day long, but when you're moving your meeples around, you can never go through an edge of a tile that has a mountain range on it. You're going to have to go around it. Now, the actual action of these spaces, remember that after you take the meeple action, the moving meeples action, then you get to resolve the action of the last tile that you landed on. This has to do with getting magic items. So you either spend 1 of your artisans or 2 slave cards or fakir cards. So depending on what edition of the game you have, you're either going to have slave cards or fakir cards. They are treated the same, mechanically speaking. So then you use either 1 artisan or 2 fakir cards, and you will simply take the top magic item off of the stack. And the only other tiles are these 2 specialized market tiles. These function like the other market tiles from the base game, but in this case, you spend 4 gold and you get to take 1 card from the market, but you get to choose from all 9 cards, which can be, it's selectively useful, but it could be very useful. And lastly, we are going to take a look at new Djinn cards. There's only 4 new Djinn cards, and of course they all have to do with the new tribe, the Artisans. 2 of them are just new versions of existing cards that you'll replace the old ones with, Boaz and Kandicha, and that's because now their effects are going to work on the Artisans as well. So, for instance, Boaz protects all of your elders, viziers, and artisans from assassins. I believe the old version of the card only actually had a picture of the yellow and the white meeple. Now they just replaced it with this dull gray to show that all 3 of those are now protected. Kondicha, each time that your assassins kill one of those applicable meeples, or any meeple out on the board or in front of someone, you get to do some sort of special action. Like if you kill one of the green meeples, the merchants, you get to draw the first card from the row of resources, and so on. Now, again, it just replaced this with sort of a generic meeple to show that you can do them to any of them, including the artisans. And if you do it to the artisans, by the way, from you kill it from in front of another player, you take that meeple, and you get the top item from the magic item deck. But the two brand new ones, again, having to do with the artisans and the magic items. Ptah here says that every one of your artisans is going to be worth 2 additional victory points at the end of the game. And Geb here says that each of your precious items that you've collected, the victory point items, is going to be worth an additional 3 points. And that, my friends, is the Artisans of Naqala expansion for 5 tribes. It just basically makes an already good game better by adding some new variety to the things that you can do and changing the setup just a little bit. But trust me, it's not that drastic. Let's go ahead and get to my final thoughts.
I think a lot of people were expecting something really drastic from the Artisans of Naqala because it was adding a 6 tribe to 5 tribes. Shouldn't it be called 6 tribes? I got so sick of that lame joke when they first announced this expansion. But really, this is squarely falling into one of those categories of expansion that just is more of the same. And that's not a bad thing. That sounds like a pejorative in a way, but it is giving people who already enjoy 5 tribes exactly what they want, which is just more actions. It's more of exactly what makes 5 tribes enjoyable to begin with. In other words, this is not a drastic change from the base game. It integrates much more seamlessly than you would expect. It's just a little bit more teaching time, and obviously you have a bigger board to work with. But when I first saw that, I'm like, whoa, this is going to be way different. I mean, look how much real estate there is now. There's these mountains and all these different things and new actions. But when I actually sat down to play with the new expansion, it was the same. It was 5 tribes, but now there was more variability of strategy. That, I think, is the main selling point of this expansion and why I enjoy it so much, and actually why I kind of revitalized my enjoyment of the base game. Because I felt like in 5 tribes, and this is not like a total blanket broad statement, but because I hadn't played 5 tribes that much. I probably played just the base game maybe 6 or 7 times. And so I don't know that that's necessarily a way for me to gauge like the perfect way to win the game. Certainly not. I lose the game all the time. But I do feel like there were certain things that the winning players always did that were solid strategies. Going for the, I always get these terms confused, but the viziers, whichever the yellow ones are, and trying to get those point bonuses by having more than the other players, or going after the djinns that are, there's some that are just clearly better than others, and get those in order to just, solidify your other strategies and win the game using their special abilities. There were these certain types of actions that were just better, and some that were just clearly, at least to us, inferior, like the blue action, the builders, because that was so random whether or not it was actually going to pay off for you. You'd be much better off going to the market with the green guys or something like that. So I think what the game needed was just more actions and more things for you to do in order for every player to follow their own strategy and have it still work out for them. Because if everyone is going after viziers, if everyone is going after the cards in the market, it becomes it really is first come, first serve. Whoever gets there first, whoever gets the right items which can be by random chance, just depending on what they're able to do on their turn when their turn comes around, that determined who was going to win the game. And I wasn't necessarily always that keen on that. But now I think with a whole other faction, a whole other tribe for you to manipulate and use, it kind of opens up the game more than I would have expected and as much as I would have hoped. Because now someone can focus on the purple tribe and get those items. And by that person doing that, other people can be like, well, I'm going to decide to go for the market as much as possible. And I really like the djinns and the vizier, so I want to go for that as much as I can. And what ended up happening was I played with this expansion twice, and both times games were far closer in points than I had anticipated or that I had ever encountered in the past, because everyone was doing their own thing and everyone had something to do and everyone was getting a lot of points by focusing on that path, and I really enjoyed that. And talking specifically about the artisans themselves, I think it's really cool and adds much more theme to the game than I would have expected, because 5 tribes, for all that it's a cool idea, when you hear the storyline of it and manipulating these tribes, it's a pretty themeless game, sad to say. But now you've got these artisans, and they have cool magic items, and they have these mountain passes, which, again, the mountain passes in the chasm are just a way to fill out the new board, the board arrangement, but it is a cool little thematic element that wasn't there before. I think in future expansions, I want to see more stuff having to do with the actual terrain and how you can move your pieces out on the board, which is just, again, it's just a smidge of theme, but I appreciated that. I like that you have both the victory points and magic items, and also I think jewelry, and the actual magic items, which give you special abilities, but you're like, oh man, that's worth 9 points. But if I use this item in the proper way, I could get a lot more points. How am I going to balance that? Is it really going to work out for me? I enjoy that. I enjoy the whole aspect of how that works. How you can, first off, keep the artisans as points. And if you have the majority, you get even more points. So that makes it worthwhile to do that in the first place. But then the more of them you get, the more items you get to look through. I always like that mechanism in games. So and then there's the new tiles as well, which are pretty cool. Like the ones having to do with the purples just let you get that magic items. But then there's the new market tiles, which really enhance the ability to go to market and make that be more beneficial for you, because now you can pick one card from the 9, but it might be the card that you need. So this is a solid expansion. It fits way better into the game. It really, if you have this expansion, I would always play with it until they come out with like more tribes and you have to pick which one you want to play with. I suppose that's what they're going to do. The only problem is it does add to the learning time. The game is kind of a bear to teach to new people, which I had to do when the first time I played with the expansion. But if you're already familiar, if you're playing with people who are already familiar with the game, it's no problem. It's like an extra 5 minutes of teaching time. It's that simple, but there's a lot of enjoyment to be had with it. It's more of the same. It's not going to change your opinion on 5 tribes, but if you do already enjoy 5 tribes, you'll really appreciate that. I know that I did. That is the Artisans of Naqala for 5 tribes from Days of Wonder.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.